In this video, I'm going to talk about 10 cars that I think are either underrated, underappreciated, or just straight up overlooked. All right, guys, let's talk about some cars that I think deserve more appreciation than they're getting. 10 cars that I think, in my opinion anyway, that are overlooked, underappreciated, or just straight up underrated. Now, I'm going to start with the first car being the Subaru BRZ. Now, I know this is we'll say semi-popular car, but I don't think it gets the recognition it needs. It is meant to be a rear-wheel drive, driver enthusiast, driver oriented, just really fun sports car, and that is exactly what it is. But it doesn't get the appreciation it deserves because people complain about it being underpowered. Well, I think if you're saying that, then you're completely missing the point of this genius machine. The BRZ has a 2-liter flat-4 engine making 205 horsepower and 156 pound-feet of torque. Now, the new generation just came out for 2022, did up the horsepower a little bit, but I'm going to talk about last year's model simply because that's what's out on the streets right now. Now, it does 0 to 60 in 6.2 seconds. That is over a half a second faster than the Honda Civic Si 0 to 60, which is 6.8 seconds. Perfect car for the back road, something you want just a daily drive or take to an autocross. This car is phenomenal. You can pick these up relatively cheap now. We'll say in the low 20s, maybe 20,000, depending on the mileage. This is definitely a car that deserves more appreciation than it's getting. The number 2 car on my list is the Alfa Romeo Giulia. Now, this one comes in 2 different trims, the second and the highest being the Quattro SHO. But let's start with the TI model. Now, the TI model does come with a turbocharged 4-cylinder, putting out 280 horsepower and 306 pound-feet of torque through an 8-speed automatic transmission, and we'll do 0 to 60 in 5.4 seconds. Now, the Alfa Romeo has an absolutely beautiful exterior styling and interior even better. I mean, this is Italian craftsmanship and design at its best, but it is haunted by its questionable reliability. But many other manufacturers are facing this same, we'll say, stereotype of reliability, and Alfa Romeo is no different. But of course, if that 4-cylinder turbo is enough, you could step it up to the Quattro SHO, which gives you a twin-turbo V6, putting out 505 horsepower, 443 pound-feet of torque through an 8-speed automatic. Now, that one will do 0 to 60 in 3.6 seconds. Now, one of the reasons I think this one might be overlooked, besides its reliability stereotype, could be the price tag. Quattro SHO in its top trim can cost somewhere between $76,000 and $83,000. So, overlooked, probably more so than underappreciated. Now, the next car I think is going to be on my list is the Kia Stinger. This is a really good performance / luxury car that I think gets overlooked. The styling is hit or miss for some people. Some people love it, some people hate it, and yet there are still a handful that are still on the fence about it. Now, in its top trim, the Kia Stinger does make 365 horsepower and 376 pound-feet of torque, and will run 0 to 60 in 4.4 seconds. Now, brand new, this car can come in at around $50,000, which is probably why it gets overlooked. But it doesn't mean you probably shouldn't look for it on the used market. You could probably find one significantly cheaper. The interior is very comfortable, very stylish. The exterior, I guess it's going to be up to you whether or not you like it, but it's definitely a car that has a lot to offer. The next car on the list is one I personally like and don't see enough of on the street, and that is the Mazda 6. This is a car that is extraordinarily stylish. I think it looks really good. It's got a great mix of sport and luxury. The interior is absolutely phenomenal. I love Mazda's interiors, especially in the 6. But I don't think it comes with quite enough power, and that's why the car gets overlooked. With only 187 horsepower, it wasn't much of a departure from the Mazda 3. As a matter of fact, I think the Mazda 3 was exactly 187 as well in its top trim. So it definitely needed a little more power for that extra size. And that's why the new model now has the turbocharger, putting out 250 horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 60 in 6.1 seconds, and a as tested price in that trim, $34,000. So if you're looking for a fun to drive, sporty yet luxurious car with a turbocharger and a good bit of torque, you might want to look at the Mazda 6. Next on my list is one that I think is heavily overlooked, and that is the Chevrolet SS. Now this is a four-door sedan with a 6.2 liter V8 engine putting out 415 horsepower and 415 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. Now the SS was discontinued in 2018, but I mean, you could always find one on the used market. These cars were so overpriced at the time that I think that is really the main determination of why they didn't sell that well. Of course, they did have a few reliability issues themselves, but it wasn't necessarily power drivetrain related. It was a lot of odds and ends. Starting price when new was $46,000, which is a lot of money, but if you wanted a sleeper vehicle with a V8 and enough room for the whole family, this was definitely the way to go. You could get it in automatic or a manual, which was a plus, and rear wheel drive only. So you got the muscle car feel with the family practicality, kind of a great way to go. It wasn't too loud and obnoxious, so it kind of flew under the radar. But again, I think that price tag kind of put it out of range for a lot of people. Now, since we're on the topic of family sleepers, my next car is just that, and that is the Ford Taurus SHO. This came with the 3.5 liter EcoBoost engine, which was twin turboed V6, putting out 365 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque. Now, this did come with an all-wheel drive system, 6-speed automatic transmission, and would run 0 to 60 in 5.5 seconds. This is another car that would definitely fly under the radar, because if you didn't know what it was and what to look for, you would completely just think it's your everyday Ford Taurus. The SHO is definitely the definition of a sleeper. Now again, this is another one that might have been priced out of its range at $44,000, but on the used market, you can get them significantly cheaper. I've seen them down and around even the $18,000 to $19,000 range. Get a really good one with some low miles in the low 20s. So if you want a car to carry a lot of stuff or a lot of people, all-wheel drive system to get you around in bad weather, and performance to boot, this is definitely the way to go. Now, if family sleepers aren't your thing and you want loud and proud in an all-American muscle car, the Dodge Challenger RT might be the way to go. Now the RT has the 5.7 liter Hemi, which doesn't really meet up with the 392 or the Hellcat, but if you're not someone who goes to the drag strip all the time or is an avid drag racer, then the RT is going to surprise you, because 375 horsepower may not sound like a lot, but the 410 pound-feet of torque is. Now with the options of a 6-speed manual or an 8-speed automatic, the Challenger RT will do 0 to 60 in 5.2 seconds. Now, I have seen some scenarios where I've witnessed the car do a 4.9. That is really impressive. Now, that is definitely fast enough to have some thrills on the street and burn some tires off if you want. Now, this car, I believe, just simply gets overshadowed because it is not the 392, which is 485 horsepower, and obviously not the Hellcat with 707. 717 now, I think it is. But the RT is definitely a fun car. If you're just looking for a backstreet runner, something to drive around all the time, and again, you're not an avid drag racer, this RT could definitely prove to be fun. Next car up has a very popular name, but is new to the streets. That is the Toyota Supra. Now, when we think about Toyota Supra, we all think about the Mark IV, but the new Supra has been controversial at best, because Toyota has teamed up with BMW to produce this car, and although Toyota designed it, it does have a BMW drivetrain, so that is why it's kind of getting shunned, which I don't believe is fair, because if you drive it, if you've seen the testings, the 0 to 60s, this is a phenomenal sports car. It handles so incredibly well. Now this is a turbocharged V6 putting out 382 horsepower and 368 pound-feet of torque. Now that 382 horsepower has been dynoed at the tires. Toyota rates it at the crank, but we're getting those numbers at the tires, which means this car could be putting over 400 horsepower. Now that is with a very quick 8-speed automatic transmission, 0 to 60 in a very impressive 3.8 seconds. And will run the quarter mile in 12.1 at 117. Now those are really, really impressive numbers. The styling of this car, I love the looks of it. The interior, absolutely beautiful. Again, every automotive journalist who have tested this car have raved about how it drives, but it's just not getting the recognition because it's not a 2JZ like the Mark IV. They wanted an all Toyota car, and well, we got a collab. But then again, a lot of people are doing that. They always have for the longest time. And I think it's just the Supra name. If we'd have named this car anything else, it's phenomenal. But it's the purists, and it's a Supra, but it's not a Supra. And that's why I think this car gets overlooked. Next up is the Dodge Viper. I love this car, and I rarely see them on the street. This is the definition of American muscle. Now the last generation Viper came with an 8.4 liter V10 making 645 horsepower, 600 pound-feet of torque through rear wheel drive, 6-speed manual transmission, and had a top speed of 206 miles an hour. Now the Viper will do 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds. That is absolutely phenomenal. And for a starting price in the low to mid 90s brand new, this was a bargain deal. Now, this car has been discontinued, but you can still find them on the used market. The problem is that that $90-some thousand price tag is now looking anywhere from $120,000 to $150,000. Now, if you went with the ACR model, which is top of the line track edition, you're looking between $220,000 and $300,000. This is definitely a car that should be on the road more than it is. It's an absolute super car at a good price. I can't believe more people didn't buy this car. I mean, this is a gorgeous, gorgeous looking car, and the performance just speaks for itself. And since we're on supercars, that brings me to number 10, and that is the Acura NSX. This is also a car I see very little of. Now, the Acura NSX does have this nostalgic thing from the 90s. It was the supercar to have the Ferrari fighter. But the new Acura NSX is a hybrid, and I think maybe that's what hurt the sales. Now, the Acura NSX packs a twin turbocharged V6 for a grand total 573 horsepower and 476 pound-feet of torque. Now all that power goes through a 9-speed dual clutch transmission with manual shift mode and is capable of 0 to 60 in only 3.1 seconds. Now those are definitely supercar numbers, and it definitely also has supercar looks. This is a really good looking car, especially in orange. I love the looks of this car in orange. Call me biased though, I love orange vehicles. But this is a really good looking car, definitely defines supercar. But with that also comes a supercar price tag at around $160,000. Now that is probably why you don't see a lot of them on the street, because at $160,000 there are a lot of other options. But again, that is probably why this car, I believe, is overlooked and underappreciated. It's a phenomenal car. Whether the price tag is something you agree with or not, the performance goes without saying. So I want your comments down below on any of the 10 cars on this list. This is my personal list. This isn't something I pulled from an article. What do you think of these 10 cars? Do you agree with them? Do you not agree with them? I want to know what your comments are down below. I really want to hear what you think should be on the list if I didn't already name it. Do me a favor, if you made it this far in the video, I do appreciate it. Please drop a like on it. Consider hitting that subscribe button and bell notification. I'm Kevin, and I'll catch you on the next upload.